Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, in whatever order you want it and wherever you are. Welcome, Blue Marble Riders, to my top 5 hates of my Suzuki VSTROM 1000. Now, I did one of these for my other bike, the Kawasaki Z900 RS. It got a lot of love, or a lot of hate, should I say. It got a lot of attention anyway. I'm going to do one for this because it's a bike I've had now for nearly 5 years. It's a 2014. I picked it up late 2015. It had been lost in a box, believe it or not, and I got it for an amazing deal. Not one of the things I dislike about it, I can assure you. Now, before you get worried about whether I'm going to slam this bike, I'm not. I've obviously had it for 5 years. I love it and I intend to have it for a lot longer. So calm down, all you owners of VSTROM 1000s. I'm not going to slate your bike. What I am going to do is point out to prospective owners 5 things that do bug me a little bit. One in particular that bugged me so much I had to change it. I think that's important. So here we go with number 5. Now, this is always subjective and you already know where I'm going now, but compared to my other bike and many bikes out there, none of these ADV bikes, these road sort of adventure style touring bikes, are particularly good looking. And you'd have to say, with their beaks and all, the VSTROM falls into this category as well. Now, the previous generation I really did not like. I looked at it and I used to just dismiss it completely. Not a bike I could ever ride. Looks are important to me, call it vanity, call it what you will, but I couldn't do it. Now, when it came to this VSTROM 1000, I had already had a VSTROM 650, which had helped sort of sand the hard corners off the way the bike might impact you straight away. And I actually didn't mind it. And over the years, the looks have grown on me to the point where, you know what it's like when you get familiar with something, they tend to grow on you. And this is no difference. The VSTROM has grown on me to the point where now when I look at it and I am pleased by what I see. But I would have to admit, 1, ADV bikes in general are not the prettiest of all the bikes out there. And 2, when I first laid eyes on them, they were a bit quirky. Not like the Moto Guzzi ADV bike they've got out. Not that quirky, but quirky. So that was number 5 on my list of top 5 hates for the VSTROM 1000. Number 4 is the noise. Okay, it is a water-cooled V-twin, and you would think that's going to make an attractive sound. And at revs and at power and touring and while moving right now, it does. But when you are at idle, there's something agricultural, something clattery, something just a little bit jarring. Now, I ride with earplugs, so it doesn't impact me very much, and it's something I can get over. However, I have pulled up beside cars. People have looked at my bike and thought, is that thing okay? What's wrong with it? And I have had one comment from a friend who said that doesn't really sound much like a motorbike. But you do have that lovely deep thrum that comes into play after you get going, which is very, very nice, which you can hear through the earplugs. The at idle sound, though, is a bit of a put off, and it is one thing that I still find grating. If I ever forget my earplugs, it's something that I can't sort of live down, and I will pull over and hunt through this thing looking for my earplugs. So my 4th on my top 5 hates of the things I dislike about the Suzuki VSTROM 1000 is the noise at idle. It does, if you pull the clutch in at idle, take the edge off it. It's a bit of that Ducati dry clutch lug nut in an ice cream pail sound, and that's a reason I could never own a dry clutch Ducati. That sound is 100 times worse, and I just could never get over it. And that's again a subjective thing. So the top 3 are very subjective. Okay, on to number 3 of my top 5 dislikes for the Suzuki VSTROM is, even though it's got a hydraulic clutch, I find it quite heavy. It's not heavy for everyday riding, but riding in stop and go traffic, or when there's an accident and you're stuck in traffic and people in their automatic cars are just rolling forwards and stopping, rolling forwards and stopping. I know that if I'm on my Kawasaki Z900RS with its cable clutch. And interestingly, I had a question about this the other day. That is super light and never goes out of spec. You know, you've heard that people with cable clutches often complain that their clutches change as the engine warms up or gets too hot, goes out of spec, and it gets maybe less bite, or the bite occurs later, etc., etc. That never happens with the Kawasaki, and if I'm caught in traffic with that thing, well, I don't even know I'm using the clutch. Whereas with this, then it's a different story. After about 10 minutes of constant in and out, you start to get arm pump on the clutch. It is a beautiful hydraulic clutch. It never changes its settings, never any chatter, nothing. But the feel of it is heavy. So that's my third dislike on my top 5 hates for the Suzuki VSTROM 1000. The heavier than normal clutch. Okay, on to my second, and this really is a hate. I'm going into the hate category now. I really should have labeled this top 5 dislikes, but I can't help it because the top 2, particularly the second one, is a hate. Look at that, an old Toyota Celica. Huh. Got to appreciate those things. Okay, so my second one is the stock windshield. The stock windshield that came with this bike really does fall into the category of something I hated. It physically assaulted me. Literally, my helmet would vibrate. The airflow coming off it would hammer my helmet, and it didn't matter what helmet I was wearing. It would hammer it until I got to the double vision and slight headache in the temples category. You could move the stock VSTROM windshield. You can see how I'm doing it now. You can move it all the way back, or position 2, or position 3. But you couldn't move it up and down unless you unscrewed it and moved it onto these bolts. And I tried everything. I couldn't get rid of it. It was just a disastrous, for me, windshield. Now, there are people who say it's never impacted them, but I wonder if the length of their body is different, or perhaps the fitting of their helmet. I'm not sure, but for me it most certainly did, and it was the same on the 650. That particularly bothered me on the 650 as well. So I think it was a case of Suzuki engineers not really doing their wind tunnel testing, or offering something aftermarket to make a few more bucks. So that was my second on my list of top 5 hates for the Suzuki VSTROM 1000. Okay, on to my first of my dislikes. I'm not going to call this one a hate because it's actually a dislike, and I will do a top 5 likes for this bike. This will definitely feature in the top 5 likes as well as being my number 1 dislike, and I'll tell you what it is. It's the fact that moto journalists and riders who have never ridden this bike slate it, dismiss it, write it off, or poo-poo it. And I heard someone, the Likable Rider in Germany, I think he was doing a podcast with Teapot One, he brought up and said, well, what about the VSTROM 1000? People who ride that just love it. The Likable Rider immediately lambasted it. Oh, God, never. Whoa, wow. I don't know, but the sort of bikes that he has, I don't think he has probably ever ridden one, but I'm going out on a limb there. And that's the case for so many people. You've got 3 types of people. People who ride VSTROMs and love them. People who have never ridden VSTROMs and hold an opinion like I used to. Look down my nose at it as a F-150 Swiss Army knife, jack of all trades, nothing bike. Ugly. Never would get one. And then you've got the third type of rider. I own a $20,000 to $25,000 BMW KTM or Ducati Multistrada fully loaded. And how could something that costs that much, that little, possibly be any good? Or, of course, 3B, they're defending their purchase. They've bought that bike and it must be fantastic, and I've got to justify why I spent $20,000 to $25,000 on that bike. So that really is my top of my 5 hates, and really it's a backhanded compliment to the V-Strom. So there you go, folks, all of you people who were sitting there sort of worrying that I was going to slate your bike. I'm actually giving it the biggest compliment I can, and that is I would not replace this with a BMW R1250 GS or a KTM 1290 1190 combo. I wouldn't do it, principally because I've looked at the owner satisfaction ratings for BMW and KTM, and they are through the floor. People are generally not happy when they're polled about it. Whether they write about it on the forums, I don't know, but BMW owners have several major opinions about their bikes on the negative side of things, and one of them is the rear shock failure. Another one is the funny lacing on the front wheel that makes it sort of egg-shaped oval. Another one is the electronic failures, the recalls. Go look at the number of recalls that BMW have had. So those people who slate the V-Strom have never ridden it, and do so because they've got some other bike that they feel they have to justify the extra expense on. Yeah, that gets up my nose, and it gets up my nose because there are a lot of people being gypped out of a darn good bike because of reputation. However, it's also one of my favorite likes. I love the fact, as you'll no doubt see if you ever watch my video of the video review of this bike, I love the fact that this bike flies under the radar. That's one of the things that does attract me to it. Okay, Blue Marble Riders, thanks for listening to my top 5 hates on the V-Strom 1000. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click or check that little bell. This is the Blue Marble Rider, out.
Once again, thanks for watching, everyone. If this is the first time you've watched, please consider subscribing. I do product reviews, motorcycle reviews, off-road and on-road vlogs, as well as tours. Don't forget to follow me on social media, that's Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, and to like, and especially, I'm begging you here folks, subscribe. This is the Blue Marble Rider, out.